Happy New Year, Mama. Now get out. Those were the exact words that came out of my son's mouth before he slammed the door in my face. The thud echoed through the entire hallway. I stood there with my suitcase in hand, unable to move. I had traveled 8 hours by bus to be with him on New Year's Eve, and he had just kicked me out like I was a stranger. My name is Viola Banks. I am 60 years old, and this is the night that changed my life forever. I still remember the chill I felt in that hallway. It wasn't just the winter cold. It was the coldness of rejection, of abandonment, of understanding that your own child can look at you as if you were a burden. I had been planning this trip for months. Marcus had been living in the city for 5 years. He had married Tiffany, a woman who never spoke more than 3 consecutive words to me. But I didn't want problems. I just wanted to spend New Year's with my son, see his face, hug him, remind him that his mother still existed. When I arrived at his building that afternoon on December 31st, I was tired, but happy. I brought sweet potato pies I had baked with my own hands, Marcus's favorites since he was a boy, pies wrapped with all the love a mother can give. I rang the doorbell. I heard footsteps. The door opened just a few inches. It was him, my Marcus, but his look was that of someone who didn't recognize me. "Mama, what are you doing here?" "I came to spend New Year's with you, baby." "I called you last week, don't you remember?" He looked back over his shoulder. I heard Tiffany's voice from inside. "Who is it, Marcus?" "It's my mother," he replied without opening the door any wider. There was a silence that lasted barely 3 seconds, but felt eternal to me. Then I heard Tiffany's footsteps approaching. She appeared next to him. She looked me up and down. Her face was pure disdain. "You didn't tell us you were coming," she said with a fake smile. "Yes, I did. I spoke to Marcus last Monday." Marcus looked away. "Mama, it's not a good time. We have plans." "Plans, son? It's New Year's. I thought we could be together." Tiffany crossed her arms. "Viola, we have a dinner reservation at a very exclusive place. You can't just show up like this without warning." "Like this? As if I were a problem, as if my presence were a nuisance. I just want to be with you all for a little while. I don't need to go to any fancy dinner. I can stay here, wait for you, or I can leave early." Marcus sighed. He looked at me with those eyes that used to see me with love and now only showed discomfort. "Mama, honestly, it's not a good time. Marcus, I am your mother. I traveled 8 hours to see you." "Well, you should have called ahead," Tiffany interrupted. "We can't change our plans just like that." I felt something break inside me, but I still tried to stay calm. "Okay, I understand. Can I at least come in for a glass of water? I'm very tired from the trip." Tiffany looked at Marcus. He shook his head. "It's better if you don't, Mama. The house is a mess." A mess. I managed to see behind them. The living room was spotless. It shined. There were fresh flowers on the table, crystal glasses set out, everything ready for a celebration. A celebration I was not part of. "Son, please." "Mama, I already told you it's not a good time." And then Tiffany smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Viola, maybe you can come back another time with more notice. Today we really can't accommodate you." Accommodate me, as if I were an inconvenient visitor, as if I weren't the woman who gave birth to Marcus, the one who raised him alone after his father abandoned us, the one who worked double shifts for years so he could go to college. I looked at my son, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to remember everything we had been through together. But he just looked down. "I'm sorry, Mama. Happy New Year." And he closed the door. I stayed there in front of that closed door, hearing them lock the deadbolt from the inside. I heard their voices drifting away. I heard a laugh, Tiffany's laugh. Then, for the first time in many years, I felt completely alone in the world. I took my suitcase, walked slowly down the stairs, and left the building. Outside, it was getting dark. The streets were starting to fill with happy people, carrying bags of food, bottles of cider, getting ready to celebrate. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know anyone in that city. The last bus back to my town had left an hour ago. I walked aimlessly, my legs trembling. I don't know if it was from the cold or the sadness, probably both. I reached a park. There was a bench beneath a tree. I sat there, opened my suitcase, took out the pies I had made with so much love, looked at them, and wept. I cried in silence because I didn't want the people passing by to see me falling apart. Sometimes we trust too much in those we shouldn't, don't we? The night went on, and the cold became more intense. I was still there, on that bench, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to feel. And then I saw something that would change everything. On the other side of the plaza, a figure was moving slowly. An elderly woman was walking barefoot. Her feet, swollen and dirty, scraped the pavement with every step. She wore an old torn dress, shivering from the cold. People passed her by without looking at her, as if she were invisible. But I saw her. I saw her clearly, and something inside me, despite my own pain, made me get up from that bench. Before I tell you what happened that night with that elderly woman, I need you to understand who I was before that moment. My name is Viola Banks. I was born in a small town in the South where everyone knows everyone and doors are never locked. I grew up with the smell of fresh biscuits and the sound of church bells marking every hour of the day. I married young. I was barely 20 when I met Ray, Marcus's father. He was a handsome man, hard-working, with strong hands and smooth words. We married in June of 1983. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. My white dress, simple and clean, the wildflowers my mother wove into my hair, Ray's look when he saw me walking down the aisle. I thought it would be forever. Marcus was born a year later, in April of 1984. He was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. He had his father's eyes and my small nose. He cried little. He smiled a lot. From the first day, I knew that boy was my reason for existing. Ray worked in construction. I stayed home taking care of Marcus, cooking, cleaning, waiting for my husband to return every evening. We were poor, yes, but we were happy, or at least I thought we were. The first few years were good. Ray would play with Marcus in the yard after work. He'd put him on his shoulders. He taught him to name the birds that flew over our house: blue jay, sparrow, mockingbird. But things change. People change. When Marcus turned 5, Ray started coming home late. He smelled of beer, sometimes of perfume that wasn't mine. I asked questions. He got angry, shouted at me, told me I was a boring woman, without ambition, without beauty. One morning in November of 1990, I woke up and Ray was gone. His clothes had vanished from the closet. His toothbrush was no longer in the bathroom. On the kitchen table was a crumpled note. "I can't do this life anymore. Sorry." That was it. 6 words. 35 years of my life reduced to 6 words on dirty paper. Marcus asked for his father for months. "Where is Daddy, Mama?" "He went to work far away, baby, but he'll be back soon." I lied. Ray never came back, never called, never asked about his son. He simply disappeared as if we had never existed. I was left alone with a 5-year-old boy and not a dime in my pocket. I had to learn to survive. I got a job at a laundromat. I woke up at 5 in the morning, left Marcus with my mother, and worked until 7 at night. My hands cracked from the soap and hot water. My back ached from leaning over the machines, but I didn't care. I did it for my son. Marcus grew up healthy, grew up smart. He was the best student in his school. The teachers told me he had a brilliant future, that he could go far if he studied. And I clung to that hope. I worked more. I saved every dollar. Sometimes I didn't eat so he could have a new notebook. Sometimes I wore old, mended clothes so he could have shoes without holes. When Marcus finished high school, I cried with pride. When he got into college, I felt all my sacrifice had been worth it. And when he got a scholarship to study business administration at a university in the big city, I felt I had touched the sky. "Mama, I'm going to make you proud," he told me the day he left. "Everything you did for me, I'm going to pay you back 10 times over." I hugged him, kissed his forehead, gave him my blessing. Just be happy, son. That's all I need. The first few years in the city were good. Marcus called me every week. He told me about his classes, his friends, his dreams. I sent him money when I could, baked goods when he missed home cooking. He graduated with honors in 2006. I traveled for his graduation. I sat in the last row of the auditorium in my nicest dress, crying tears of happiness as he walked across the stage to get his diploma. That day he told me, "Mama, this is for you. Everything I am is because of you." And I felt that everything had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every pain. But then Marcus got a good job at a major corporation. He started making money, real money, more than I had seen in my entire life. And the calls started to space out. Once a week turned into once every 2 weeks, then once a month, then almost never. In 2018, Marcus called to tell me he had gotten married. Married? Why didn't you tell me, son? I would have wanted to be there. It was small, Mama. Very private, just the two of us and the judge. His wife's name was Tiffany. She came from a wealthy family. She had studied at private schools, traveled to Europe. She wore clothes from brands I couldn't even pronounce. I met her only once when I went to visit 6 months after their wedding. She greeted me with a polite, distant nod, like you greet a distant acquaintance, not like you greet your husband's mother. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Banks," she said, with a perfect cold smile. Mrs. Banks, not Mom, not Miss Viola. Mrs. Banks, as if I were a stranger. During that visit, which lasted barely 3 days, I noticed things. Tiffany never let me in the kitchen. She said she had already cooked, that I shouldn't worry, but I wanted to cook for my son. I wanted to make his favorite meals. Marcus didn't insist either. He simply smiled and said, "It's okay, Mama, rest. You've worked hard enough in your life." But I didn't want to rest. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to feel I still had a place in my son's life. Before I left, I gave Marcus some money. It was $500, everything I had saved that year. "Here, baby, buy something you need." He looked at the money, then looked at Tiffany. She smiled with disdain. "Mama, we make good money. You don't need to give me cash." "But I want to. Please, take it." Marcus took it, but I saw in his eyes that he was embarrassed. Embarrassed that his wife saw his poor mother giving him money. I went back to my town with a heavy heart. Something had changed in my son. He was no longer the boy who hugged me tight. He was no longer the young man who called to tell me his dreams. He was someone else, someone I no longer recognized. The following years were hard. Calls became scarce, visits non-existent. I tried not to bother them. I didn't want to be the nagging mother-in-law, the intrusive mother. But I missed my son. I missed his voice, his laugh. And then came the year 2024, December. I decided I wouldn't spend another New Year alone. I decided that even if Marcus didn't invite me, I would go see him just to hug him, to remind him his mother still existed. I baked his favorite pies, bought my bus ticket, and traveled those 8 long hours with hope in my heart. I never imagined he would close the door in my face. Now I return to that New Year's Eve, to that bench in the park, to that barefoot elderly woman who would change my life forever. Because sometimes, when everything seems lost, the universe sends you a sign. That elderly woman walked slowly through the plaza. Her bare feet left small, damp marks on the cold pavement. I watched her from my bench, still with the pies in my lap, tears drying on my cheeks. People passed her without looking. Some dodged her with disgust. A young couple crossed the street when they saw her coming. A man in a suit yelled at her. "Get out of the way, old woman." She didn't respond, just kept walking, shivering. I felt something strange in my chest, a mixture of sadness and rage. How could people be so cruel? How could they ignore someone who clearly needed help? And then I remembered. I remembered that I too had been ignored that night. My own son had closed the door on me, treated me as if I were invisible. Maybe that's why I could see that woman, because I also knew what it was to be invisible. I got up from the bench, my legs still shaking, but I walked toward her. When I reached her side, I could see her better. She had white hair, tangled and dirty. Her face was wrinkled by years and suffering. Her eyes, though tired, had something I can't explain, a kind of light, of wisdom. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said softly. She stopped and looked at me. Her eyes met mine. "Yes, child?" Her voice was weak but kind. "It's very cold. Do you have a place to stay tonight?" She smiled, a sad smile. "No, child, I have nowhere to go. But don't worry, I'm used to it." Used to it. That phrase broke my heart. I looked at her feet. They were swollen, full of calluses and cuts. I couldn't imagine the pain she felt walking. "Wait here a moment, please." I ran back to my bench, opened my suitcase, and took out my thickest coat, the one I had brought for the city cold. I also took out my comfortable walking shoes. They weren't much, but at least they would protect her from the frozen pavement. I went back to her. "Here, ma'am, please put this on." I held out the coat and the shoes. She looked at me in surprise. "No, child, I can't accept. You're cold too." "I'm fine. Please take them." I insisted until she took the coat, put it on slowly with trembling hands, then bent down to put on the shoes. When she stood up, her eyes were wet. "God bless you, child. Few people even look at me." "What is your name, ma'am?" She hesitated a moment. "You can call me Eleanor." "Nice to meet you, Miss Eleanor. I'm Viola." We stood there in the middle of the plaza while people kept passing around us, getting ready to celebrate. Fireworks were starting to be heard in the distance. It was less than 2 hours to midnight. "And what are you doing here alone, Viola?" Eleanor asked. "A woman like you should be with her family." I felt a lump in my throat. My family doesn't want me near tonight." Eleanor nodded with understanding, as if she knew exactly what I was talking about. "Children sometimes forget where they come from," she said softly. "They go out into the world and get ashamed of their roots." "Do you have children too?" Her look saddened. "I had a daughter. She died 15 years ago. Cancer. Since then, I've been alone." "I'm so sorry." "That's life, child. Some go, others stay, and you learn to keep going." We sat together on the bench. I opened my bag with the pies. "Are you hungry, Miss Eleanor?" Her eyes lit up. "I haven't eaten anything since this morning." "Then we'll eat together. I baked these for my son, but, well, he didn't want them." We unwrapped the pies. They still smelled of sweet potato and cinnamon, filling the cold air. Eleanor took the first bite and closed her eyes. "I haven't eaten something this delicious in years," she said with a cracked voice. "Thank you, Viola. Thank you from my heart." We ate in silence for a few minutes. Around us, families passed by laughing, carrying bags, rushing to get to their homes before midnight. "You know something, Viola?" Eleanor said suddenly. "I've been walking these streets for 5 years. Since I lost my home, I've seen thousands of people pass me by. And do you know how many have stopped to ask if I need anything?" "How many?" 3. You are the third. Only 3 people in 5 years." Sadness invaded me. "People are afraid," Eleanor continued. "Afraid of seeing poverty, afraid of seeing suffering, because if they see it, they have to acknowledge that they could be in my place someday." "But you aren't scary, Miss Eleanor. You just need help." "Ah, child, what a noble soul you have. That's why I'm sure something good is going to happen to you. Life always rewards good people." I didn't believe it. In that moment, sitting on that frozen bench, after being rejected by my own son, I didn't believe life rewarded anything. But I said nothing. I just kept eating my pie, sharing that moment with a stranger who strangely felt more like family than my own blood. We finished eating. I put the leftover pies in my bag. I thought maybe tomorrow I could sell them, get some money for the return ticket. "Viola, do you have a place to sleep tonight?" Eleanor asked. "No, the last bus already left, and I don't have money for a hotel. I know of a shelter near here, for homeless folks. It's not pretty, but at least you'll be under a roof. And where are you going to sleep?" There's a doorway, 2 streets down. I usually sleep there. It's protected from the wind." I looked at her. This elderly woman, barefoot until a few minutes ago, homeless, was still thinking about helping me. "No," I told her. "We'll go together to that shelter, both of us." She shook her head. "The shelter only has 3 beds, and on New Year's they are always full. It's better you go." "Then we'll sleep in the doorway together." "No, child, you—" "Miss Eleanor, please. You gave me your company when I needed it most. Now let me give you mine." She stared at me, then smiled. A smile full of gratitude and affection. "All right, Viola, we'll go together." We got up from the bench. I took my suitcase. Eleanor adjusted the coat I had given her, and we started walking together toward that doorway she spoke of. The streets were getting emptier. People were already in their homes getting ready for the toast. The 2 of us, on the other hand, were walking toward a cold doorway to spend the night. But something strange was happening. Despite all the pain I felt in my heart, despite Marcus's rejection, despite being homeless that night, I felt at peace because I wasn't alone, because I had found someone who needed me as much as I needed company. We arrived at the doorway. It belonged to an old building with stone columns and a high ceiling. The floor was marble, cold but clean. There were pieces of cardboard stacked in a corner. "This is where I sleep," Eleanor said. "It's not much, but it protects us from the wind." We spread the cardboard on the floor, sat on it. I took out a blanket I had in my suitcase, and we shared it. Fireworks started exploding in the sky. It was 11 at night, 1 hour to the New Year. "Viola, can I ask you a question?" Eleanor said. "Of course, Miss Eleanor." "Why did you help me? No one does. Everyone ignores me. Why didn't you?" I paused to think. Why had I done it? I didn't know exactly. Maybe because I had also been rejected that night. Maybe because I saw my own pain in her. Or maybe simply because it was the right thing to do. "Because you are a mother too," I said finally. "And mothers shouldn't be alone on the street on New Year's." Eleanor said nothing, just took my hand and squeezed it tight. The minutes passed. The fireworks intensified. In the distance, we heard shouts of happiness, people toasting, people hugging. We were there, in that cold doorway, 2 women forgotten by the world, but we weren't alone. And that, in that moment, was enough. Although I didn't know it yet, my life was about to change. Because sometimes when you do something good without expecting anything in return, the universe sees you and rewards you in ways you never imagined. Midnight arrived with a roar. Fireworks lit up the sky like falling stars. Shouts of "Happy New Year" resonated through the city. People hugged their loved ones, toasted with champagne, kissed under the illuminated sky. Eleanor and I looked at each other. She smiled with sadness. "Happy New Year, Viola." "Happy New Year, Miss Eleanor." We didn't have champagne. We didn't have black-eyed peas. We only had our company. And in that moment, it seemed to be enough. The fireworks lasted almost 20 minutes. Afterward, slowly, the noise began to diminish. The streets fell silent again. The city went to sleep. We tried to sleep too. We huddled under the blanket, trying to keep warm, but the cold was biting. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face, his eyes avoiding me, his hand closing the door. "Can't you sleep?" Eleanor asked in the dark. "Not really." "Are you thinking about your son?" "Yes." There was a silence. "You know what the hardest part of all this is, Miss Eleanor?" I said. "It's not that he closed the door on me. It's not that he left me on the street. It's that he couldn't even look me in the eye, as if he was ashamed that I was his mother." Children sometimes get lost, Viola. They get lost in the world, in money, in appearances, and they forget what really matters. I gave him everything I had. I worked until my hands bled so he could study. I went without eating so he could have new shoes. And now I'm a burden to him. Eleanor sighed. A mother's love is the most selfless in the world, but also the most painful because children grow up and leave, and sometimes when they come back, they aren't the same. Did your daughter make you suffer too? No, my daughter was always good to me until the day she died. But I saw many mothers suffer what you are suffering now. It's more common than you think. And what did those mothers do? Some forgave, others walked away, but they all kept living. Because that's what we mothers do, Viola. We keep going even if they break our hearts. We stay silent. The cold kept penetrating. I huddled more under the blanket. Miss Eleanor, can I ask you something? Of course, child. How did you end up on the street? She took a while to answer. When she did, her voice sounded distant, as if remembering something very painful. I lost my husband 20 years ago. He was a good man, owned a business, made good money. We had a nice home. But when he died, I was left alone with my daughter. She was 30. She lived with me because she was sick. Breast cancer. She paused, took a deep breath. I sold everything I had to pay for her treatment. The house, the furniture, even my wedding ring. I spent every dime trying to save her, but I couldn't. She died in 2009 on her birthday, 35 years old. I am so sorry, Miss Eleanor. When she died, I was left with nothing. No house, no money, no family. I tried to work, but I was old. Nobody gave me a job. I ended up on the street, and I've been here ever since. I listened to her with a tight heart. This woman had lost everything, absolutely everything, and still had the kindness to share her space with me. You are a very strong woman, Miss Eleanor. I'm not strong, Viola. I'm just a survivor. There's a difference. Finally, we fell asleep, or at least I tried to sleep. The cold woke me up every half hour. I listened to Eleanor breathe beside me. Her breathing was irregular, as if she struggled to draw air. The hours passed slowly. When dawn broke, January 1st arrived with a gray, cold sky. I got up aching. My whole body hurt from sleeping on the floor. Eleanor was still sleeping. Her face looked so tired, so fragile. I let her rest. I went out to the street. The city was empty. The streets filled with trash from last night's celebration. Plastic cups, streamers, broken bottles. I walked aimlessly. I needed to think. I needed to decide what I was going to do. The next bus to my town left at 3 in the afternoon. I had to get money for the ticket. I had to go home. But something in my heart ached. A part of me didn't want to leave. I didn't want to accept that my son had rejected me. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that it had all been a misunderstanding. I walked toward Marcus's building. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped that seeing it by day in the sunlight, everything would look different. Maybe I hoped he would come down and tell me he was sorry, invite me in. I arrived at the building. I stood on the sidewalk looking up. Marcus's apartment was on the 3rd floor. The windows had the curtains drawn. I waited there for nearly an hour. People started coming out of the building. Neighbors, families, all looking at me with curiosity, some with disdain. An older lady said to me, "Are you lost, ma'am?" "No, I'm waiting for my son. He lives here." "Oh, on the 3rd floor?" "Yes." She looked me up and down. My wrinkled clothes, my messy hair. It was obvious I had spent the night on the street. "Oh," she said with a dry tone, and walked away without saying more. I kept waiting, but Marcus didn't come out. The curtains of his apartment remained closed. Finally, around 10 in the morning, I gave up. I went back to the doorway where I had left Eleanor. She was already awake. She had folded the blanket and arranged the cardboard. "Good morning, Viola. Where did you go?" "Just for a walk." She stared at me, as if she knew exactly where I had been. "You went to look for your son, didn't you?" I couldn't lie to her. "Yes,